Hello, welcome to another portion of my biblical teachings. In this slideshow, this is going to be covering the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 7, specifically the beasts mentioned in Daniel's visions. Okay, this is a part of my biblical prophecy course. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Moving forward, I just want to make some things clear. I'm a strong believer in the understanding of words and knowing what words mean. All right. And God, he is not the author of confusion, right? And so he has definitely given us the proper interpretation and knowledge for things that may be hard to understand. So just moving forward here in Daniel, some words that I want to make clear are the word beasts and horns. Both of these in general mean kings prophetically. Prophetically, beasts means king and horns means kings. Okay, and I have provided the scriptures here as well that show that interpretation. First off, we have the lion, which is the first beast of Daniel's visions. And this lion was seen to have had wings of an eagle. And eventually, these wings were plucked off of the lion. And the lion then stood upright and was given the heart of a man specifically. Okay. Historically, we can see and understand that during this time, the Israelites were under the captivity of the Babylonian Empire. And during the time of Daniel, the king was Nebuchadnezzar. And just the history of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar was very prideful in the kingdom that he had ruled over. And he had been warned scripturally, he was given warnings of, him losing his kingdom, essentially, right? He had this first dream, this vision, and he was told as well. And yeah, eventually Nebuchadnezzar in his heart, he looked upon what he had and he said that he had basically done it by himself, right? And then God had confounded him to a mind of a beast, and he was with the animals for a time. And then eventually God had restored him his sanity, and he had then acknowledged God as being King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right? So essentially, this is who this lion is, King Nebuchadnezzar. So, yeah. Next off, we have the second beast from Daniel's visions, which is the bear. And this bear was seen to be leaning on one of its sides and to have three ribs in its mouth. Okay. So, historically, the Persian Empire first was a joint rulership that started with the Medes and the Persians. Okay. And eventually, the Persians were the ones that ultimately took sole rulership over the whole empire. And so we can parallel that with seeing this bear leaning on one side, indicating that the Persians were the ones, one side of this animal, one side of the kingdom to be ruling over the whole. And then we have the three ribs in its mouth. From my research, this is understood to be some of the kingdoms that the Persians had conquered, right? The Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. The Babylonians, my bad, Egypt and Lydia. So that in general is the whole gist of the second beast. Next off, we have this third beast of Daniel's visions, which is the leopard. Okay. And this leopard was seen to have four heads and wings like a bird. Okay. So historically, just moving along with the world powers and the world empires during this time, we have the Persians and then we have the Greek Empire. And this is the third beast. The Greek Empire is the third kingdom after the Babylonian Empire. And so during the Greek Empire, it was ruled by Alexander the Great. And historically, it had taken Alexander not long to conquer the area, the land. It was a swift conquest, right? It was quick. And so this parallels quite nicely with this vision that Daniel had about this leopard, this king, essentially. Because remember, this beast, that each beast is a king. So with this kingdom, the Greek Empire, historically, we can see that eventually it was broken up into four parts with the generals of Alexander. And looking back at this beast had four heads. And so, again, historically, we can see how things parry up together quite nicely with what God is showing Daniel during this time. Last but not least, we have the fourth and final beast, which is the dragon. Okay. And since this is the fourth beast of Daniel's vision and the fourth king, historically, we could parry it up to see it as the fourth empire of the world during this time, which is the Roman Empire. Okay, during the time of 146 BC to 476 AD, after Christ's death. Okay, and in verse 7 of chapter 7, we can see Daniel characterizing this beast as very terrifying, ferocious, powerful, very different than any of these former beasts before it, right? And along with this terrifying beast, it had 10 horns, okay? And amongst its 10 horns, three were eventually plucked out and one came up in its stead. And this one horn was profaning and blaspheming the name of God, and it had eyes as well, okay? So prophetically, the dragon or the serpent is always identified with Satan, the devil, or evil, if you will, okay? So, just on the bigger, grander scale of things prophetically, this dragon can be also seen as that. And yeah, Rome itself was very brutal, just going back to the character of this dragon being very terrifying, fierce, brutal. Yeah, Rome, they had the worst punishment ever to man, which was crucifixion, right? So yeah, this is where we can see historically who this dragon is. All right. Lastly, we have the interpretation and illustration of the 10 horns of Daniel's initial dream on the beast. And just historically moving along, we know that Rome was this beast, and that prophetically, the horns mean kings, okay? And eventually, three kings are going to be plucked out and are replaced by one king that profanes God, basically, blasphemies God, right? And to my understanding, that will be none other than the Antichrist himself, okay? And you can get a little bit more discernment from this in the book of Revelations, in John's vision. He sees a vision of a beast with seven heads and 10 horns, right? And a adulterous woman is riding the beast, essentially. And this is the same beast prophetically that we see in Daniel's vision, right? Because we know that the beast throughout the Bible, throughout scripture, is depicted as the same thing, evil, Satan, you know. So that same beast in Daniel's vision with 10 horns is the same beast in Revelations chapter 17 that John sees, right? It's just a little different. And moving along, we have again God giving us the interpretation of this thing. Again, it does call for wisdom and a discerning mind, but nonetheless, God still does give us the interpretation. And so, Revelations chapter 17, verse 12, the angel tells John that the 10 horns are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, and they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast, the spirit of the beast of evil, the spirit of evil, right? And so I do not believe that this has happened yet, just to go with the line historically of where we're at prophetically in end times things. I do not believe that we're currently in this. It has happened yet, but things are happening, right? Because we know that the 10 horns are 10 kings, and that this one horn will profane God and blaspheme God. And again, that can be seen as the Antichrist, I believe personally. You can do your own research and get your own discernment. But this, I believe, is the current dispensation of time that we are in. Um, Again, from verse 12, the angel had told John that the 10 horns will all be in power and authority at the same time for an hour. And then one horn will come up and blaspheme and profane God. And again, I don't believe that has happened yet. So, yeah. But nonetheless, that is it. Here are my sources. I did not just pull everything out of my head. I do encourage everybody to do their own research on their own to get understanding and discernment for themselves from God Himself. But in the meantime, I hope that this video gave insight and understanding and hopefully inspired to seek more about this information and prophetic things. Peace.